Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of our veterans, servicemen and women, and those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. The clerk will call the roll. After roll call, under the provisions of open meeting law, for those of you in attendance, please be informed that MATV is recording this evening's meetings, and one of our Malden residents, John Mayara, will also be recording. So just beware, there will be audio and video recordings of this meeting. First order of business.
Councilor Anderson. Councilor Kamel. Here. Councilor Condon. Here. Councilor Crowe. She's here. Councilor DiMaria. Councilor Matheson. Here. Councilor Murphy. Here. Councilor O'Malley. Here. Councilor Spatafora. Here. Councilor Winslow. Here. Council President Sika.
Here.
Yes.
Councilor Murphy.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Hogan, who is the director of our parking department, is here before us this evening. I've asked him if he would come in and speak with us about the parking department, new department that we put in place during the last budget cycle. And I think it's always great to go back and just kind of get an update as to what's happened, what the successes have been, what any impediments that he's facing are, and also what he's looking forward, current initiatives that he's working on, some that he's finished, such as an updating of the traffic regs, I think, which have been, extremely helpful to everyone in getting that done, and where he sees himself going over the coming years. So, Mr. Hogan, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much for coming in and giving us this presentation.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, hold on. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you for having me. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to kind of give you guys an update on what's gone on since you approved the creation of the department with the budget a little bit over a year and a half ago. So I think a lot of you know sort of what the department traditionally has done, right? Everyone typically thinks of parking as simply being enforcement. I think a lot of this initiative was really to take it a lot further beyond that. You do each have a couple documents in front of you that I'm going to follow along loosely, but don't feel like you need to go page by page. But of course, we do have a staff of 11 folks out there every day, almost 24 hours a day. It's 22 out of 24. We tell folks we're not going to tell you the 2 hours they're not out there because we keep it, we keep it varying a little bit. 6 days a week. We treat Sundays as a day that we handle on an exception basis. As you know, we also handle the resident parking program that used to be handled out of the police station. And we're working with you all on the drafting of a citywide residential program as well. In addition to that, a big part of what we do, and one of the things that we've tried to increase focus on since the department got created, is focusing on the schools. Schools are something that aren't revenue generators. We don't go out there looking to write tickets, but we go out there looking to try to just keep traffic moving along as safely as you can in areas that are, quite frankly, quite chaotic at the end of every school day. So part of what we do is focused on enforcement, and part of it is just focused on keeping traffic moving along, without any desire to write tickets for any reason at all. Some of the things we've done since the department was formulated is, we created an office. If some of you haven't had a chance to stop on over at Jackson Street, the old function hall, I gave you some pictures in the packet there. Kudos to the Public Facilities Department. We didn't hire any of this work out, but using internal resources, we took an old function hall and created a really welcoming place for the public to come. We're open the same hours that City Hall is open, and one of the things that we take a lot of pride in is providing access for residents to deal with parking issues on almost a round-the-clock basis. So we generally have assignments for folks to answer either phone calls or see quick fixes between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. So even though we may not be in the office, somebody from the office is there and able to respond and to send somebody out to deal with an issue that the public may have. If it's not something that needs to be dealt with right away, we may put it off till the next day. But if it is something where somebody's reaching out to us at 9 o'clock at night and says someone's blocking our driveway, it doesn't do any good if you're waiting till the next day to handle it. So I think a lot of what we've tried to do is just to give the public a place to come on a more frequent basis when we had the most recent storm. Again, the phones were ringing off the hook. Not being in the office wasn't going to do any good. We answered the phones, right up until midnight on the day of each storm. So trying to, again, give the public a place to come to when they have a problem and have an office that they can come to has been, I think, a real win. You all know we installed the parking meters in the downtown, and when we did that, we also went from 1 hour to 2 hour parking in the downtown. That has had an enormous positive impact, I think, on parking turnover in the downtown. We've heard it from a lot of folks that they're able to come in, find a place to park in a way that they had never been able to before. Folks tend to think of meters as simply being a revenue generator, but the reality is, in an area like ours, with the MBTA and with the location that we have, they're really a necessary evil in order to try to encourage the turnover that you need to have in order to get folks be able to find a spot when they want to come and visit one of our businesses. As Councilor Murphy mentioned, I did give you all each a copy of an enormous undertaking for us, which was to draft from scratch regulations for our traffic and parking. We started with a hard copy of a document from 1991 and literally took that and went through the minutes for every meeting that's happened since then, and with tremendous assistance from former City Clerk Karen Anderson, who I think is working harder since she retired than she did when she was here, and Sheila Fermano as well. Literally helped by either driving every city street or using Google Maps to try to compare signage to regulations and to try to get something in place that we could then work from. So I gave you all a copy of it, not because it's perfect, but it's an evolving document that, again, I tell you, we literally had nothing to start from and built that from where it is. And we'll continue to make it better as time goes on. Again, a couple other things just in terms of creating a website that gives residents one place to be able to go to get information that they're looking for, and try to streamline the permit process to be able to make that a little bit more resident friendly as well. But make no mistake about it, I think from our perspective, parking is a quality of life issue for a lot of our residents, and probably more so than even I realized. We've tried to do some things with the amended regulations that address some of that. I think some of you know that we made changes to the winter parking regulations this year that tried to give a little bit more relief to the thousands of residents that rely upon on-street parking. So rather than start it on November 1st, as we've done in prior years, we decided that it would start when the first snowstorm was forecast to happen. Did it create a few challenges with getting folks sort of used to the fact that winter parking had begun? Absolutely. But I'll tell you this, that in the time last year between when November 1st happened and when we had our first snowstorm, we ticketed over 5,000 residents for being parked in violation of winter parking regulations. Some of the days were days like today. It's 60 degrees out in January and the snow hadn't fallen yet. So we think even though, as I said, it created a few more challenges with that first storm, we think it was really the right thing to do for our residents. And I think proof that what we do shouldn't be driven by revenue, but should be driven by what it is that's the right thing to do. Similarly, along that lines, we've done a lot more. So we amended our handheld system to issue a lot more warnings for residents, right? So you walk up to your car and you violated something that maybe wasn't common sense for you to know you couldn't do when you see a white ticket on your car, and then you pull it out and you see that it actually has no money due. It's just a warning, and it's really intended to sort of make you aware of the fact that, did you know that per our regulations, your car can't be sitting in the same spot for more than 72 hours, right? Something that, intuitively somebody would not know. Park in front of a fire hydrant, you're not getting a warning. But if you do something that might not be common sense or might not be common across all cities, we try to use those as a way to inform residents. It writes a history to our system, and yet it's a softer way to try to do some enforcement. Again, it's not a money generator, but it's the right thing to do for residents. We did amend our regulations to allow residents. We had a lot of residents who, per our prior regulations, could not park their car on the street simply because it was not a passenger plate. So if you had a Ford Focus that you happened to use for your little cleaning business and it was registered as a commercial vehicle because it had to be for insurance purposes, you couldn't park it on the streets in the city of Malden, it was considered a commercial vehicle and it was a $50 fine. We amended those regulations so that a resident of Malden whose car is registered here and is under 10,000 pounds gross vehicle weight can get a permit to be able to park on the street for a small nominal fee so that we can differentiate those vehicles from other ones. I think, Councilor Murphy, you and I had spoken about this one before. There were countless, pickup trucks and otherwise passenger vehicles that sort of got swept up by our desire to keep truly commercial vehicles off the street. So You're a tow truck, you're a flatbed, you're still not going to be able to park on the street, but if you're basically a van or a pickup and smaller, and you belong to a resident who lives here, you're now able to park it on the street legally. And again, that's been something that residents have really been appreciative of the ability to be able to finally do legally.
Would you just, for the general public that's listening, once again repeat that in order to do that, though, you do need to get a special permit?
Yep, so good point. All you need to do is come down to the parking office. It's a small fee. It's a $25 fee for the entire year, and it's a way for our folks to know as they drive around the city that vehicle is registered in Malden and qualifies. So you do have to go through that step, but folks have been pretty happy to do that as opposed to just being told they can't park on the street. We're not really sure where they can because a lot of times these are their primary vehicles. And then one of the last things that we did was also to eliminate with the residential parking fee. We used to, believe it or not, have an added fee for folks that came in person versus folks that mailed in the applications. There was a $15 additional fee to discourage folks from coming in and doing business with us in person. We thought sort of it sent a weird message, so we eliminated that, and folks have been pleased to be able to come in and not be penalized for coming in person. Few things that are underway for initiatives, and I think this is one of interest to you all, is an initiative to install no parking street sweeping signs citywide. I think in the past, there'd been numbers thrown around what this would cost that were pretty substantial, $750,000 numbers. Working with MassCore, which is part of the Department of Corrections system, we've been able to price out signs citywide where the materials alone would be right around $63,000. We're going to use in-house resources. So one of the folks that works for me that used to be part of the DPW, the sign guy, as we call him now, works as part of the parking department. But he and another resource from the DPW will go across citywide and install these signs. And our intent is to utilize, as a way of sort of just picking a low-hanging fruit, our intent is to utilize all existing utility poles across the city, which will make it a much easier effort than trying to install channel poles across the city, which rust and bend and tend to be a real eyesore. So the signs will advertise for that street, both the even side and the odd side rules for that street. Again, in an ideal world, it would be ideal to have them on both sides of the street every 30 feet, but we think this is a sort of a reasonable way to start giving residents some biting shot of knowing when street sweeping is by looking up at a pole, even if it's not, like I said, every 15 feet on both sides of the street. And rather than spending $650,000, $700,000, we're doing it at a cost of less than $65,000. So we've got a contract with them. I'm in the process with them of finalizing the artwork, and I expect those to start coming into production within the next week or two and get as many of them up as we can before the street sweeping season starts. But I think we can make quite a bit of progress in that, that 3-month time frame before we start street sweeping. But I think we all know that residents really are looking for the ability to be able to know when street sweeping is by doing what traditionally we've all done, which is to look up, right? It's sort of what we've all been trained to do. I did provide you all a chart here that kind of gives you an idea, and we're careful to say that I don't think what our department does should be about revenue, but the reality is that it's a byproduct of what we do, and if we do it well, then there's certain economic benefits to the city that help with the initiatives that happen across the city. So I did kind of give you a little bit of a trip down memory lane back to 2010, parking revenues across the city and what's happened between 2010 and what's projected for 2019. Certainly 2019 reflects the addition of income from the parking meter program, and there's no doubt that has a positive effect, and then the rest of it is, I think, really just more consistent enforcement of resident-initiated complaints that have resulted in certain types of violations being up, even at the same time as we're trying to be a lot less heavy-handed on other things that tend to impact our residents, like as we spoke about a few minutes ago, the winter parking regulations. So the revenue overview, I think, kind of tells you that things are heading in a good direction, and I think the promise that was made when you all approved this, that it would be beneficial to us economically, has also held true. I think the last thing that's worth mentioning is just needless to say, the department handles, now sort of parking meters and collection of coin and sort of all the necessary controls that go along with that. And we've got a very tight process. One of the great things about the meters that we have is they're all electronic meters, and they allow us to have a a separated process whereby we've got one person doing the collection and then a second person who's got access to the system to run the reports on what the collection should be and to be able to provide an audited control of what it is that's come in. So I actually gave you a copy of what that report looks like. It's pretty amazing. I mean, the meters literally measure every time a nickel goes in them and how many nickels we should have collected, even though we don't take them, people do put them in. And so a separate person is auditing the collector against what the system says it should be, and then I'm reviewing those reports before it happens. So it's a highly controlled process that really should be something that shouldn't have us finding ourselves in a position that I think Revere did most recently, where simply somebody's going out collecting coins and depositing in them, and there's absolutely no controls over them. I think the electronic meters are tremendously beneficial in being able to do that type of thing. So I did give you just a whole bunch of reports that I'm not going to walk through, but I thought you all might find interesting to go through in your spare time, just to kind of give you some of the year-by-year details, some of the ideas of some of the different meter reports that we get. And as I said, I think we've got a lot of initiatives ahead of us. The street sweeping signs, I think there continues to be the opportunity to look at those things that our residents find to be sort of most challenging from the perspective of our own policies and trying to make them more resident friendly. We joke a lot of times that a lot of what we do is to try to find the balance between the off-street parkers and the on-street parkers, right? So you got folks that have driveways and folks that don't. And it's oftentimes when you benefit one, you sort of tick off the other one, and we try to keep like each one of them equally unhappy, and then I feel like we found the right balance. So I'm happy to take any questions that you all have, and hopefully you've heard from some of your residents that it's been a step in the right direction.
May I just ask one thing?
Councilor
I'll
Murphy.
turn it over to everybody. Ron, would you just touch on the electronic vehicles, electronic cars?
Yeah, so we bought, with the Green Communities grant that the city had received, so public facilities, I think, have done an excellent job of getting us qualified as a green community. Some of that money went to purchasing 2 electronic vehicles that we use in the department. They've been a tremendous fit for us. So we have some folks that literally drive 100 miles a night going back and forth across the city, and we've checked GPS, not going to New Hampshire or anything like that. So, but truly drive more miles than you might ever imagine. And these vehicles are able to be charged up and driven, all night without ever having to gas them up. And believe it or not, one of our biggest challenges was, folks needing to gas up a vehicle when the DPW was closed. And so we've eliminated that. I think we've helped, sort of be a greener community in the process. And operationally, they work so much better. So, the electrician for public facilities wired up the chargers at very minimal cost, and they get charged every day, and they get used probably to the tune of 150 miles every day without having to purchase any gas, which is fantastic.
Thank you. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Ron, for coming out and providing this very detailed presentation. Just so I understand, the 2018 totals for revenue were about 195,000. I just added up all the months. Is that roughly?
195,000?
Yeah.
I think I'd be out of a job.
Am I reading it wrong?
Where do you, Council?
So I see monthly revenue, and I just added up.
Oh, you're just looking at the parking meter alone.
Oh, that's just, so it's just, yeah, exactly.
That page
Exactly.
just shows you the month-by-month parking meter revenue since we put them in, which was,
July.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to confirm that. And then,
So they run between, 32, 33, and 35,000 a month, depending on the sum of the weather and things along those lines.
and then the total for the ticket program was 1.6 million.
Right.
And I see it has multiple years going back to about 2000. Are these people paying back old tickets?
Yeah, that's right. So it shows every year, the year of the ticket that was paid.
Okay.
But these represent monies collected during that year, and it shows. So what ends up happening, Counselor, is oftentimes, finally somebody ends up having to sort of pay old tickets because their registration gets marked for non-renewal, and that's why you end up with people paying such old tickets initially. If you do look at the chart that's here for revenue, I do want to call out, if you look at the 2013, no, right before that, the revenue overview chart that looks like this. It's like the last actual PowerPoint, the second to last PowerPoint slide page, I think.
I don't know if we have that.
I hope you do.
I think I was
Best chart in the thing.
It should be right before these.
Yeah, you've got it, okay. Counselor, I might have left that out of yours.
Oh, wait, hold on. Revenue overdue.
So, you know, I do want to point out, if you look back to 2013, we had run into a situation where, at one point in time, the city had brought on a pocket ticket system. It was called Velocim. It was this magic pen that the officers literally would go out and fill in this piece of paper with this pen and try to sync it with the Bluetooth. Long story short, it wasn't working. So then they reverted back to the manual tickets. The problem was when the pen was implemented, the resources to input the tickets had been sort of deployed elsewhere, right? So if you look what happened by 2013, we were down, you know, to about $500,000 in revenue, not because people weren't necessarily writing tickets, but they weren't being collected, they weren't being followed up on, and most of your ticket revenue gets collected because you follow up, right? So a certain percentage of people pay voluntarily, most of them pay when you send them that first notice in the mail. So the big jump between 13 and 14 was when one of the first things that I did when I joined the city was to bring Kelly and Ryan on board and to convert all the old data to their system and to do a lot of mailings and what have you to try to collect some of this back revenue. So we're able to make a huge dent and put us on a better path going forward. But we were heading, you know, prior to 2010, we were at over $1 million a year, and then just every year it was dropping because the money just wasn't being collected. It was being written. We had people being paid to write them. We just weren't collecting it. So,
And just so I know, 2019 is projected?
that's right. It's projected based upon just the current run rate.
Perfect. And then, so just to make sure I fully understand, and I think I do, on the 2018 totals, 1.3 million total, 1.6 million total from all years, but 1.1 from 2018 alone.
From tickets written in the current year, right. So, but what ends up happening is you get the, you know, you always get a lag from the prior couple months where naturally you've got a fair amount that will always lag. And then, yes, you just have the older things that, you know, look, 2016 tickets of $69,000 were paid, you know, almost a year and a half later. It's just kind of the nature of the beast.
And you'd be able to run a report to find out what's outstanding?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, you know, the process of what's outstanding is everybody gets a late notice and then a second notice and then an automated mark at the registry. It's sort of a system that eventually, you know, results in most folks having to pay their ticket short of somebody just, you know, canceling a registration and leaving the state or something like that. But it's a, you know, we hope by mailing the notices timely that folks are encouraged to pay before the additional fees add up because, you know, there's no doubt that the additional fees can make it a $25 ticket, you know, add up pretty quickly.
Awesome. It'd be great to know what the percentages of our collection is year over year, just to, hopefully it's improving. You had mentioned the citywide sign program, about 65,000. What's the status of the sign printing machine that we purchased?
Yeah, so we've got it over in the office, and we've had some training with folks. I will tell you that the machine's got a tremendous amount of flexibility. It would not be something that would be geared for this type of volume. To give you an idea of the pricing that we got on these signs, it's $7.11 per sign. You can't buy the aluminum for that price. So, you know, MassCore, they've got access to an economical workforce, and so therefore, the cost of doing this, you know, it would never. So I think, Council, we're looking towards that as something that we can be able to use for the one-offs.
Okay.
But for a volume job like this, where automation's required and what have you, you know, we're literally talking about 9,000 signs.
Okay.
It just makes sense to outsource it, you know.
Awesome, thank you. And then one last thing, I know you talked about financial audits of the department. Obviously, it's a heavily cash-based department to some degree with the meters.
Yep.
And I know that there was a variance between, there was actually more collected than what the machines were telling us. Is it the nickels? Is it
Yeah, so interestingly enough, and you know, the meter folks have just said that there's just always this small positive variance that, you know, every week what we actually collect and turn over ends up being, you know, $10 to $30 more than what the report says it should be, and they've just said that there's a certain number of coins that that don't register for whatever reason and then ultimately end up being credited to the account. So you do have that small margin of error, but we do turn over all the reconciliation reports with our funds every week to the treasurer to show that here are the source documents, here's the money that was collected, and so they don't have to do a reconciliation because we've essentially handed it to them.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, Ron, I really want to thank you for all your great work since you've come to the city. I mean, I think we made a lot of progress here, and I really give you credit because it's definitely somewhat of a thankless job. So I think at least as counselors, we can thank you for all your hard work. It's sometimes there in the streets, I'm sure, with the parking clerks, it's a difficult job. So it's good to see you're in good cheer, and I think that's keep up the great work and keep at it. I appreciate the update. And thank you.
Councilor Condon.
Thank you, Madam President. Ron, thanks for coming here tonight. I was a big supporter of establishing this parking department. I knew it would be successful. You're doing a fantastic job. Thank you. I don't know if everybody realizes, but you're not just doing the parking job. You are the best multitasker I've ever met in my life because you're the go-to guy in any project that happens in this city. So I definitely appreciate you, as everyone up here does. Thank you for your good work.
Jack of all trades, master of none, right?
Yes, you are. Do nickels work?
They work for us because we get your nickel and you don't get any time.
Okay.
You might not find it as positive as we do, but yeah, use them.
Councilor Spatafora.
It's tough to follow up Council Condon's soliloquy there about Ron, but no, Ron.
Give it a shot.
I know. Great job. Like Council Condon said, I think, we were talking about parking. I've been talking about parking for a long time. It is, in the neighborhoods is one of the biggest issues we have. And a lot of times it's between, school drop-offs, which we've talked about several times, and just commuters. That seems to be the biggest problem, but and we've looked at changing our parking rules and regulations, but I think it was somebody's idea. Probably a year ago, he said, before we start making drastic changes, why don't we kind of fix what's broken here? And that was the parking department. There was none. The city is certainly large enough now to have one, and you took the ball, you created one. If anybody hasn't gone in there, it is very inviting, but more importantly, I was in there a couple times where a couple residents came in for parking tickets, and I was standing in the background. They got great service. They're very friendly. It's not easy to convince people to try to pay a ticket, and they try to sometimes get away with saying some stuff. But the technology we have, they take pictures, so it's pretty impressive. My question was already answered about the number of signs we're going to purchase. What I would say is, how much cash versus credit card in the machines? Percentage, if you had a guess.
Yeah, no, it's literally 50-50. So
It is?
Yeah, it's 50-50. The credit cards are used more in the kiosk at the lot.
Yeah.
So that skews it a little bit, but it's 50-50 right down the line. So, when you use a credit card, it's a 1 hour minimum. So a lot of folks just find it easy to slide the card in, hit a couple buttons, and walk away. But they're getting used a lot. They're absolutely getting used a lot. And I should have mentioned, I think one of the most important things when you have meters is you better make sure they're working, because there's nothing more frustrated for somebody. The moment that a meter gets jammed, if it's a coin jam or a credit card reader gets jammed, both Ernie Adelino and myself get notices on our phones that tell us that meter's jammed. And so part of what we've got to be committed to doing is, even if it ends up being on a Saturday at 3 o'clock, is getting somebody out there, oftentimes it's one of us, to make sure that it's working, because otherwise it's just frustrating for folks. But the technology on them, if you keep them working, is fantastic. They've got sensors on them that tell you everything that's going on in real time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I would say, the revenues tell a part of the story. The neighborhoods, there's no meters, but, I'm an advocate of keeping and making sure that they're obeying by their rules and regulations. But for the central areas and the businesses, I don't think this could have been a bigger change for them, meaning you can come down here now as a merchant, or excuse me, as somebody who's willing to come down here and spend their money and buy something, or go out to dinner here and find a parking spot. So this, to me, helped the merchants tremendously, because any council here would know, you couldn't come down here before, whether it be in the daytime or the evening, and find a parking spot. And I think that deterred a lot of people. I think now that you have the ability to do that, it says volumes. And as we build out the rest of the square here, I think it's going to become even more important to have the ability to have that flow of traffic and making sure that we can accept the people who want to come here, either to visit or residents that have to drive to this part of the city to go out and dine or buy something. So it's a great job all around. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Ron, I join my colleagues in praising the work that you and the department are doing, and I think it's great for our city. The one pushback I'd like to mention, and you and I had the conversation, was what I consider the experiment that was tried this year of delaying the implementation of the winter parking regulations until the first snow event occurred. I think we got kind of caught flat-footed this year with the snow event happening, and only hours later were people expected to have moved their cars into the winter parking regulations. So I assume that you're going to kind of do a post-mortem on that and figure out if that was the best, was the benefit of giving the delay on the winter parking regulations. Was it worth it, or was there another way? Should we not wait until the first snow event, or set a later date, or some issue like that? Could you speak to any of that?
Yeah, so I think, Council, what you're getting at is, I think, one of the biggest challenges we have, and I'm glad you brought it up, which is really finding out how to communicate with our residents in a way that goes beyond the way that we might communicate sort of ourselves. And what I'm getting at is, so we made the decision to begin the winter parking at Saturday at noontime. We made that decision on Thursday. And then all the different wheels went in motion, social media, and we put a front page ad in the newspaper, right? And said, let's get to as many folks as we can. Clearly, there's got to be better ways of communicating with our residents who aren't social media users, aren't picking up the Advocate and what have you, right? And I think that's one of our challenges, is to recognize that we've got a diverse population who communicate in a lot of different ways that might be ways that are different than what we do. So I think we've got to figure out a better way to get to them, or, as you said, look at the possibility of something that's a little bit more date certain. But I don't want to underestimate the number of people that reached out to us and thanked us for having not sort of required them to limit the parking to one side of the street for those 77 days that folks didn't have to park on one side of the street or the other. The phone calls were truly 50 to 1, and for folks that, now admittedly, once it started, it became a little bit of a challenge, and this storm was a real challenge because of the ice, right? So the cold and the quick period with which the ice hit, I think, really exasperated it. But your point is well made, which is, well, no matter what, we should sit down and say what worked, what didn't work, and how do we...
Yeah, clearly.
Yep.
It was an experiment. It was different, and I think it's important that we continue to do that. I think we need to... None of us have the crystal ball, so we try something, see if it works. If it works, we continue. If it doesn't, we roll it back and so forth. So I applaud what you're doing, but want to, as opposed to saying all the good things, I think this is one that I just wanted to push back on and at least make it known.
The only thing I'll mention, it's worth noting, so other cities around us, Everett, for the sake of discussion, Everett moves on the even or the odd side of the street storm by storm, right? So some of it is getting your residents used to your system, and when it's new, it takes them a little bit of time to get used to it, but they do it the day before the storm, odd side only. When the snow emergency is over, you can go back to parking on both sides of the street. So our regulations were really on the far end of being onerous. We tried to find a little bit more middle ground, but your point is well made that we need to say what worked, what didn't work, and how do we get to more residents next time so they hear us. No doubt about it.
Thank you.
Councilor DiMaria.
Thank you, Madam President. And I do want to not have this opportunity to say thank you to you, Ron. You not only built a department, but you really built a business for the city in 1 year. And proof is in the pudding here. With all the different phases of this business, the weather, the signage, the employees, I mean, you've identified everything. In 1 year, you built a business. So I echo all the great words from my fellow councilors, but I really, truly say thank you. You're holding the bar super high for everyone else in the city, so thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Yeah.
Councilor Matheson.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, Mr. Hogan, you have become something of an MVP here in City Hall. And I don't want your head to get any bigger, so I'm not going to say anything more about it.
No, go ahead.
But I would like to mention that this was the easiest budget cycle in my time in the council, and I think that most of that appreciation is owed to you, because you really helped craft a huge savings in this year's budget. So I know that's off topic, but thank you. I just want to go over a few things because, one of my pet peeves was the street sweeping.
Yep.
I'll get to that after the winter stuff because it's winter time. There will be more snow even though it was 60 degrees today. Did I hear you mention that when you implemented the wintertime parking rules that people were given a warning at first?
So what we did,
I like warnings, by the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In past years, when we did the November 1st,
Right.
we'd start out with warnings. This year, when we did because we put it off until the actual snow was there, we didn't do the warnings because we put off for 77 days and waited till there was actually snow on the ground, right? So I think our feeling was that, ticketing somebody initially when there's no snow on the ground didn't feel right.
Right.
But when you had a storm that sort of everybody kind of knew was coming, and again, within the limitations of what Councilor Anderson brought up about getting to people, we felt like we'd go right into enforcement.
Is your department involved in the ticket dispute side of things, or is that just the municipal hearing officer, or where's that happening?
Yeah, so it's the hearing officer that works out of the treasurer's office, but we're certainly in frequent communication with her to be able to try to give her guidance, and there's no doubt about the fact that I think we are more lenient than probably any other city around us. I think is necessitated by the signage challenge that we have. So I think a lot of times that if somebody disputes one and they've never had a winter parking violation before, they generally are given a fair amount of courtesy. If you're looking at somebody who's been here for 4 years and we
If you're a repeat offender,
Yeah.
it's going to be a different story
right.
than, hey, look, I wasn't familiar with these rules, I made a mistake this one time.
That's right.
You're likely to be forgiven in that
That's
instance.
correct. Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to Councilor Crowe, because I remember Councilor Crowe a couple of years ago, you suggested delaying the wintertime parking rules because snow is not falling that early in the year. And I appreciate your foresight. And Mr. Hogan, I can tell you, the people of Ward 3 really do appreciate the new rules that we put in place. I had one resident in particular before the winter even came that said, hey, look, I'm walking blocks to my house because of this rule that's in place before the snow even falls. 5,000 tickets were issued prior to this date last year when we implemented wintertime parking rules on November 1st. Is that correct?
Yeah, 5,000 tickets were issued
So there's
last year.
5,000 people, or at least 5,000 tickets that aren't going to need to be paid by our residents this year because of this new policy.
That's correct.
I think that's wonderful. I just want to understand this sheet a little bit better. I don't know if this is going to illuminate for anything for people at home, but it'll certainly help me out. I'm looking at the first sheet of the revenue. It looks like bottom right-hand corner is total revenue. These numbers represent, when I follow over to year 2000, does that mean that in the year 2018 we recovered a ticket from 2000?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep,
All right,
that's right.
so we're still recouping money from prior years, even as far back as 18 years ago.
Absolutely correct. Yeah,
Okay.
it's
very interesting.
It's like taxes. It never goes away,
Yeah, that's right. Yep, and death. Let's talk about street sweeping a little bit. And before I do, what about the towing part of things? Is that done out of your department?
Yeah, so only by Mass State law, only the police can authorize a tow. Oftentimes, it's done at our request because of, again, either a vehicle that's truly blocking somebody's driveway, and we'll ask that we'll look to see if we can locate the owner. If it's somebody next door, we'll go knock on the door. If not, we'll ask that the vehicle be towed. Or if somebody ends up with 5 tickets that are over 21 days old, then they become eligible for a tow.
Yeah, last year we had a snow emergency that turned out to be a non-snow event. It was like an inch of snow, and my understanding is that we towed something like 200 cars. I can't think of anything more frustrating than coming out of my house and seeing my car is gone. First wondering if it's stolen, then having to take a cab somewhere to find it and then bail it out. Yeah. Are we doing anything to remedy that type of situation from coming up again?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things, Councilor, and I'm glad you brought it up. So one is our redrafted regulations make it very clear that our general policy on a storm would be to tow from the main arteries, and that to handle enforcement on your side streets with ticketing, unless it truly is in the way of the plow being able to plow the street, right? So I think that was a I know that was a change from prior years where we sometimes maybe to a resident weren't completely consistent with when we towed and when we didn't. Our regulations make it now very clear that these are the main arteries, and the fine for parking on them during a snow emergency is a tow versus the rest of the city where the fine is a fine.
Is there a certain number of inches that needs to fall before towing is triggered?
Yeah, so no, so generally towing is triggered by the declaration of a snow emergency.
Okay.
There is not a black and white line on when a snow emergency is declared. It's really the police chief by charter has that call, but he does it in consultation with the DPW director and myself, and we'll have a dialogue. But you know, I'll tell you, Council, that I've pushed on trying to be sort of, again, more resident friendly about this because
that should be our focus.
Yep.
We should be partners with our residents.
Yeah, and there's a second part of the winter parking regulations that feeds into that I should have mentioned. We had over 100 streets across your wards that didn't allow parking between midnight and 7 a.m. during the course of the winter months, either side. Doesn't matter what was on the ground.
Right.
Either side. And so it's been in place for over 45 years, before the cell phone existed, before the internet. So I was looking for some empirical data that it snowed more between midnight and 7 a.m. I couldn't find it. So with that, we eliminated those restrictions. And again, another thing where residents, again, neither side, 100 streets, you couldn't park on both sides. So they're
That's
now
burdensome to the residents that live there, obviously.
That's right. So they're now back to even odd. You can park on one side of the street, and if we declare a snow emergency, then you've got to be off of both sides of the street. But what it means is, on a day like today, we're not requiring 100 streets to have no cars parked on either side of them, which I think is huge for our residents.
Okay, so last thing I'm going to bring up is the street sweeping. I have always felt, I mean, it's been a couple of years now, I'm not going to beat you over the head with this, but the street sweeping violation ticket was doubled 2 years ago. And at that time, the city council had said and reiterated that we should not be ticketing our residents without fair warning, let them know by sign. They shouldn't have to use a text message alert on their smartphone to figure out when the street sweeping is going to occur. And certainly if they're a visitor, they wouldn't even be able to avail themselves of that. So I believe last year, Councilor Condon, several of us, we had all talked about how we could use maybe summer youth employment. We could use our city council, little revenue accounts that we use to help out the wards and the neighborhoods. And we were going to try to roll out some signs. That didn't happen. You're telling me it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, the signs are, the first batch has already been ordered, so we're ordering them in batches of type, right? So there's 1,100 signs that we need that say first Monday, second Wednesday, that type of thing. So we'll, in order to be able to let Mass Department of Corrections be able to do them in groups like that, the first batch has already been ordered. I can't tell you because I'm just not sure how long it will take us to put them up. But again, we're not, I can't stress enough, I think part of the challenge with this was coming up with a solution that was reasonable that we could actually do. And I think getting to like putting in a channel pole on the other side of the street every 30 feet is when the whole thing goes from this to this. So we're going to start with existing utility poles and truly going out and bolting them to both sides of it.
Yep.
I think it's 90%, it's not 100.
It's a great way to go about it.
But it's a reasonable way to give our folks some, some ability. So it's happening. I mean, it's happening, 100%. We did an RFP, we got the responses back, and again, $7.11 per sign.
Beautiful. I'm happy it's happening. I'm happy with the price. I like the way you're rolling it out. And the last thing is, now our residents who are declared residents, they've registered their vehicle, they're paying their excise tax. If it happens to be their personal commercial vehicle under 10,000 pounds, there's now a formula for them to get a special permit, park on our city streets, correct?
That's it.
Great. That
People have
solves
already
another
started coming in.
problem. That's another, any ward councilor can tell you they've had calls like this. Ron, again, don't want to give you a big head, but thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple of things. One is just a piece of information that I guess I'll just state, so we'll be quick. But I know that I had a situation, and I was very happy to see on C-Click Fix the Answer, that due to the technology that they currently have in the parking department, someone was complaining about people parking on a certain street that I won't mention the name of, and you were able, your department was able to respond, because basically the accusation was the traffic's never down here, kind of, taking care of the issues on the street. And they were actually able to come back with empirical data about how many tickets that had been written on that street during a certain time frame. So as a counselor, if you get a question like that, or someone's complaining, know that he has data at his fingertips, that he can help you tell a resident that, the city is taking care of their business on the street. That was number one. Number two, one of the things that you didn't mention, which I think is really, really important, and I've seen tremendous value in it so far, is that in addition to everything else you're doing, that you are also now sitting on the Traffic Commission.
Yes.
And I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but I thought that was, it basically is blending, I think, the work on the street with the rationale of decisions being made in the Traffic Commission.
Yeah, so our charter allowed for the fifth member of the Traffic Commission, or actually called for the fifth member to be somebody named by the Fire Commissioner. Traditionally, the Fire Commissioner had, I don't even know if they necessarily realized it, but by default, it was the Fire Chief. And after I spoke to the Fire Chief, he said, look, you'd probably add far more value, and there's more things that hit your department than mine. I wouldn't be insulted at all. And so the charter sort of allowed the Fire Commissioner to name me as his appointee to the charter. Maybe it's something that gets addressed in the charter review that's happening, but I think it's been helpful because it's so close to what we do each and every day. So, part of what we've implemented is when we do the meetings, we literally bring a laptop and sit there with a big screen and look at the locations we're talking about a lot of times, because we were talking about them sometimes in the abstract and trying to picture whether or not, Mrs. Smith's driveway really needs a sign, not allowing parking within 15 feet of it. And so I think we've become a lot more active in trying to discuss and resolve things. I think it's been a good change. And quite frankly, we now own the regulations. You can see by just the pure volume of it, a tremendous amount of work went into these. I have a vested interest in making sure that, we're not sitting here a couple of years from now having to get them caught up again, too.
So, and I just have one last question. What's next?
I don't know, we'll figure that out. Let's get City Hall built.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Councilor O'Malley?
Thank you. My final time. You had mentioned the 100 streets that were formerly no parking on both sides, but now it's even or odd. We updated that palm card with that information.
We did, and we also had Ron Cochran do a targeted communication out to those folks on those streets who had registered with us, for street alerts. Again, within the limitations that we spoke about how do you get to all those folks, but that's how they were notified. We have had people call us up and say, hey, there's people parking on my street overnight. And when you notify them of that it's now legal, a lot of times it's folks who just like not having the cars on the street overnight, but to the resident who no other place to park, it's absolutely a positive. So, but it will take a little while probably before that word gets out to everybody. There's no doubt about it.
Awesome. Do you think you can give us a list of what those streets are, just
Sure.
so that we're all aware of kind of
absolutely.
what streets we need to be aware of?
Yeah.
And the only other thing I wanted, well, two other things. The parking meters, I think we've said this many times. On Pleasant Street, they're 15 minutes free when you pull in. So if you're going to pick up takeout from All Seasons or Hugh O'Neill's or wherever you're going to get some takeout, you can just pull up, go in, grab your food, and leave. But we've also decided to expand that up Main Street. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the response has been so positive on Pleasant Street that we've expanded it up Main Street to the corner of Main and Florence, coming on down in front of the Dunkin' Donuts and sort of crossing across to the daycare. So the whole idea is just to not to inconvenience somebody who might just be pulling up to grab their dry cleaning at Lapels or a quick cup of coffee someplace, while recognizing that on the Exchange Street side and Dartmouth Street, they tend to be a little bit longer visitors, and so we didn't necessarily have the need for that. So you'll notice the meters on Pleasant Street have a different looking head on them. It's literally got a radar sensor in it that recognizes when the car pulls in. And so it's always sort of cool when you see somebody get up and they walk up to the meter and then boom, 15 minutes pops up on it, and they're able to, if they're doing something quick, they're able to sort of run in and out and without having to reach into their pocket and find a quarter or something like that. So we liked it enough that matter of fact, we got the additional sensors in yesterday, and we'll start that installation pretty shortly.
Perfect. So just so everyone knows, pretty soon, if you're going to the Dunkin' Donuts on Main Street, it's going to be 15 minutes free. If you're going to the smoke shop on Main Street, it's going to be 15 minutes free. Run in, grab what you need. The last thing I wanted to say, and I can't believe I forgot to talk about this earlier, and this was such a heavy lift of redoing these parking regulations. I know that I had a resident that was very interested in these, so I'm very happy to see that they're here. They're also posted online, I'm assuming?
Yeah, we're in the process of putting them online. We had to sort of pull them all into their, because they're Excel worksheets, we had to pull them into a PDF. But yeah, they'll be online within the next week or so.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
so the-
Finally me.
Let me just add one more thing. Just
Sure.
the only other thing I'd add before you go, Council President, is I got to be honest with you with this department. I was kind of surprised to find out how important parking was to all your residents, right? So, I mean, I knew it was something that I felt like we could do a decent job at improving it. I was almost shocked at the number of folks where once they had somebody they could go to, sort of have taken advantage of that. As I said to you, the last snowstorm, I literally forwarded the office phone to my cell phone. I said, I'll take a few phone calls. Till 2 o'clock in the morning, my cell phone's ringing from people, and so the shocked reaction when you answer the phone call is sort of half the fun, right? But I think that residents knowing they can reach out and get somebody who answers and is going to give them an answer sort of real time is a real value to your constituents. And again, everyone focuses on, is it all about the money? It's not all about the money. It's trying to be able to deal with people's problems. And guess what? When somebody's got somebody parked in front of their driveway, they don't want to call back tomorrow. They want to call back. They want somebody to answer the phone. And I think we've absolutely brought that to the table, so.
Thank you. Unlike Councilor Matheson, who doesn't want to make your head any bigger, I would like to. Not only, I just want everyone to know that not only are you the head of the parking department and the amazing job that you've done with that department, but you're also the go-to guy for a lot of other issues that this city faces. You're helping Craig and I draft some marijuana ordinances. You're in charge of the relocation of City Hall. You do school finance, Chapter 70. Charter reform, traffic commission, you help the mayor with the budget, you do energy efficiency, you do construction projects, the list goes on and on. You are my lifesaver and my go-to guy for any topic in this city. And I joke with him because when he goes into the meetings with Desi, I'm like, so do you introduce yourself as Ron Hogan, director of the parking department? Because he's going into all these different meetings and he's the director of our parking department, but he should be our city manager because he's amazing. So I just want to thank you for everything that you do for this city. It truly is amazing, and your knowledge is amazing.
Thank
so
you.
Thank you.
You guys could call my wife afterwards maybe and have a couple words with her. That'd be great. Yeah. I'll see you guys next week, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next order of business.
Approval of the minutes for January 22nd, 2019, and January 29, 2019.
On Councilor Murphy's motion to approve the minutes, all those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. I should look at your light from now on.
I'm the problem child. Yeah, I said it last week. I just want to say it again. I'm going to be voting against the minutes here because these don't include executive session meeting minutes that we had on some of these dates, particularly January 29th. Again, I think this is the breakdown of the process, so I'll be voting against the minutes tonight. Also, I just wanted to make sure everyone actually had a chance to review them. I did review the draft minutes that were sent around again. There were a number of clerical errors that needed to be corrected, so I hope you all reviewed them. Thank you.
Thank you. On Councilor Murphy's motion to approve the minutes, all those in favor? All those opposed? The minutes are approved. Next order of business.
I have 3 livery licenses to be for renewal. Linda Dialicano, 259 Mountain Avenue, Malden. Ideal Park Limousine Service, Inc., 61 High Rock Road, Malden. And Sam Son Esfort, 47 2nd Street, Malden. Those are the liveries for renewal.
On Councilor Murphy's motion to refer these petitions to license, all those in favor? All those opposed? The petitions are referred. Next order of business.
I have 1 Class 2 West End Auto, 1 Malden Street, 15 cars, renewal.
On Councilor Murphy's motion to refer the petitions to license, all those in favor? All those opposed? The petitions are referred. Next order of business.
I have 1 extended hours, Walgreens, 185 Center Street, Malden, 7 days a week, 24 hours.
On Councilor Murphy's motion to refer these petitions to license, all in favor? All opposed? The petitions are referred. Next order of business.
Order
Hold on.
that-
Councilor Winslow.
Did we, was there any public comment or anybody?
There was no public comment.
Okay, thank you, great.
That's paper 54 of 19. Order that the Public Safety Committee of the City Council perform review to ensure adequate fire department coverage and response times, especially on the east side of Malden. The review should be performed by the City Council in conjunction with the Mayor's Office, the Fire Chief, and other city personnel whose subject matter knowledge would be valuable. Be it further resolved, the discussion also include how medical emergency, specifically increased number of opioid-related emergencies impact equipment availability, considered in addition to ambulances to the fire department fleet would free up large fire vehicles. That's David Kamel.
Councilor Kamel.
Thank you. So just a little background on this. You know, we've had folks on our side of the city, on the east side of the city, specifically my residents, my constituents in Ward 6, have some concerns. As many people know, historically we had a fire station on that side of the city for a long time. It's no longer there. What I wanted to do is make sure we have a public process, address those concerns, bring in the stakeholders, and sit down and look at the data. I just want to be very clear that I'm not making any determination whether things are safe or not safe, and I don't want people to get alarmed about this. You know, we just want to take a look at it, bring it out into a public discussion, and do our best to make sure that we do our due diligence, make sure that we have adequate fire coverage. Thank you.
Councilor Winslow. Oh, sorry. Hold on.
Little housekeeping. My request is requesting this to be referred to the Public Safety Committee. Thank you.
Perfect. Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, I just want to thank Councilor Kamel for taking the lead on this issue. And yeah, I think it is important. We often hear since the loss of the Maplewood Station, are there questions in the Maplewood Highlands and that type of thing? So certainly something of concern, and it is good to evaluate this over time. And so appreciate that, and certainly would be willing to take this as lead of public safety. Thank you.
Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Councilor Kamel for bringing this paper up. I remember when I was a student at the Salem Wood a long time ago, I always remember, even as a child, wondering how that fire station got disposed from the city. So I think looking into whether or not this area is adequately covered is important and timely. One of the questions I did have is about the source data. Can you just tell us a little bit about where you got your data?
So this was forwarded to me. We have constituents who have been leaning into this issue for a long time and concerned about this for a long time. One of our constituents did obtain this through a request from the fire department. And what the council from Ward 4 is referring to is I took some of the data, put it on a map. That's how I understand things. Take the data, put it on a map so I can visualize it. The request came, there was about 11,000 calls in this spreadsheet that occurred between July 2017 to June 2018. The map you're looking at, I want to be very clear, the ones that are highlighted that are 8 minutes or more, those are 147 out of 11,000. So the ones that are within the 7 minutes or less are smaller. So this might look a bit alarmist. I don't want people to feel that this is, to feel unsafe because of this. This is just taking the data that was obtained, putting it in some kind of visual format to start to look for patterns. And this, again, also I want to make sure that it's not construed in any way, shape, or form as a criticism against our fire department. On the contrary, this is to make sure that the fire department has all the resources that they need. They do an amazing job, fantastic job. We ask them to do more and more every year with basically the same number of folks. So My hat's off to them. This is in no way, shape, or form a criticism. Just want to make sure that we are backing them up because they risk their lives to make sure we're safe. We want to make sure we're there for them.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind maybe providing us the data through the clerk, that'd be
Right,
great.
yeah, I sent the,
Not the map, but the actual Excel.
yeah.
Thank you.
absolutely. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Councilor Di Maria?
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to thank the co-sponsors of this, Councilor Kamel and Councilor Winslow. As a member of Public Safety, I truly look forward to reviewing this. Campaigning over the last 6 years, I've heard this citywide, especially in Ward 6, and it's terrific that we're going to put it under the microscope and take a good look at it. And I look forward to it, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Matheson?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councilor Di Maria. This is subject matter, I think, that is of great interest to our residents, so I think it's a good paper, and I look forward to hearing the discussion that comes out of it. One thing I wanted to mention was the ambulance portion of it. I have mentioned this during a couple budget cycles, observing that other municipalities have rolled out ambulance service, just a basic life service, not the advanced life service ambulance, but most of the calls that the fire departments are responding to these days aren't fires. They're safety checks, they're health checks, and yes, there's a lot of substance abuse that relates to that, but a lot of them aren't. My mother just went to the hospital recently, and when you make an emergency call, you don't just get the ambulance, you get the police car, you get the fire truck, but what they really need is someone with basic life service abilities. And now that cities like Melrose have rolled out some ambulances, they can charge people's personal health insurance for the ambulance ride. That's money that's going to either a private ambulance company or to your local fire department. But it is a service, and it could be a revenue generator for our fire department. And like Councilor Kamel said, we have nothing but the utmost respect for our fire department, and I want to see them have the resources they need for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Spatafora?
Thank you, Madam President. Just looking at this document, certainly there might be some understandable higher response time on the outer compass of the map, but I agree with the council's asking for the data. I think there's probably, you can't look at something in a vacuum, because if you look at the west side, there is a couple of these red dots, which are literally 2 streets away from the central fire station. So it tells me that there's something else has to be going on if it took them 13 minutes to go down a street that looks to be less than a quarter of a mile long. I mean, there's literally a red dot near Sung Kong, and the Sung Kong is literally almost a straight line to the central fire station. So I think some of this information might be, I'm not saying wrong, but I think we have to look at every line individually, because it doesn't say if there was a fire going on the other side of the city and they had to call in municipal aid to come in. So while this might look alarming to the council and the rest of the residents, and it's worth looking at, absolutely, I agree with the rest of the council saying this is not a reflection of the fire department. Maybe they do need additional resources, but some of these, they look like there has to be some other indicators that happen to cause such a delay, because and there's one right near the train station, which you could walk the fire truck there if you had to. So again, I would like to dig down in the data.
Yes.
Just to see exactly what is going on in certain instances. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilor Kamel?
Right, I do want to address that, and I was going to bring that up. These 11,000 data points, they do have different call codes, the reason behind them. And again, we just have a piece of data. We don't know, is that when they got there, or what is the process and how that's recorded? Is that recorded after they get there, they talk to somebody, somebody says, oh, geez, we have to go put that into the, we have to go log that we got here or something. So that's part of the conversation. So how is that data point picked up and collected? Is it an automatic sensor, or is it something that somebody has to do? Maybe they talk to people before they get there. And so we want to sort that out. Of course, we're not going to comb through all 11,000, but we get a sense of, where the fuzzy edges to the data are. Again, this is not a determination of anything. This was just to sort of visualize a first pass at it, why I thought maybe there was some merit to having the conversation. Absolutely don't want people to get alarmed whatsoever. I think we do live in a safe community, and I think we're just getting out ahead of it, making sure that we pay attention to it. But long-winded answer to, long-winded way to say I agree with Council Spatafora is correct. We should take it with the proper caveats to the data.
And on behalf of the chair, I also agree with Councilor Spatafora. I spoke to Councilor Kamel earlier this afternoon, and when I looked at this map, there's 2 calls that are over 7 to 10 minutes at Overlook Ridge, and there is a fire station in the front parking lot of Overlook Ridge. There should be no reason that it's taking them 7 to 10 minutes to get inside the complex. So I look forward to looking at the data in committee and seeing how they've came up with those numbers, and if there was another underlying issue as to why the apparatus took 10 minutes to get up a street with no street lights or any sort of, anything impeding its access into the complex. So, yes. There could have been a fire, there could have been, yeah. Yes, yes. So it will be interesting to discuss the data in committee, and I look forward to it. So, next order of business. Oh, sorry. Sorry, yes. Nope, on Councilor Kamel's motion to refer this matter to public safety, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The matter has been referred. Next order of business.
Be it ordained that Chapter 9 of the revised ordinance of 1991 be amended relative to the storage of solid waste. Be it hereby ordained by the City Council that Chapter 9 of the revised ordinance of 1991 as amended be further amended as follows. In Section 9.27, definitions, applications to all waste, by striking out the first 2 sentences of the definition of receptacle and inserting in place thereof the following. Recycling bins and approved trash bags which have been placed in barrels which are watertight, have tight-fitting lids, are rust-resistant, and structurally sound and easily fitted, emptied and cleared. In Section 2.28, Standard and Regulations, by adding after the words approved trash bags as appearing in the 4th paragraph of Section A, residential waste, the words stored in barrels be inserted. In Section 9.28, Standards and Regulations, by adding after the words properly tied or secured as appearing in the first sentence of subsection B2, solid waste collection by city collector, the words and stored in barrels. Councilor O'Malley.
Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. For those who are new to the council and for those who are still on it potentially, Karen, former City Clerk Karen Anderson and I worked on this proposal in 2016. So this is a resubmission of a paper from 2016. Per our council rules, every biennial session, papers expire, so this is me reinserting that into the discussion. At the time, this had came about because of 2 issues that are very near and dear to my heart, as well, or not near and dear, but very important to me and my constituents, I'm sure yours also. We clearly have a trash problem in our city. We have recycling bins that are very small, and if there's a small wind, trash is blowing all over the city. That's happening in the winter, that's happening in the summer, that's happening at all times. The Friends of the Malden River and the Mystic River Watershed Association are rightly also paying attention to this really significantly because a lot of that trash that's blowing around eventually goes into our storm drains, which eventually goes into the Malden River. So in addition to the trash blowing everywhere, we also, and many of you remember, my first year on the council, I was the rat counselor. I'd go around the city and I'd take photos of all of the squished rats and all of the crazy things that we were seeing when there was a really bad season. So because of the rats and the trash, in 2016 I proposed this ordinance. And what this would do is it would keep the existing blue bag program in place. The only thing that it would require is that we would return to putting our trash bags into trash barrels. That is a system that has worked for civilization for probably over 100 years, and it wasn't until we went to this blue bag process that we decided to put our trash bags directly on the street. Since then, you know, we have a trash problem, we have a rat problem. I think that we should return back to putting our trash in barrels, so this would require that. I also did some research with the city controller, Chuck Ranigan, about what it would cost, because I know a lot of people have talked about how we should have the bins like other cities do. If the city was to buy trash barrels and recycling barrels for the entire city, that would cost us over $1.6 million. That is money that we just don't have. So I know myself and a lot of my constituents and neighbors already have trash barrels from when we used to use them, and a lot of them still do. This would allow you to use any trash barrel you want, whether you got it at Lowe's or Home Depot, or you already have it in your yard. The only thing it would require is that you put trash in trash barrels, and it would also require that you put your recycling into a trash barrel also. Our contract with JRM allows this, I've checked that, and all they would have to do is throw it in. And obviously they're probably going to confirm that you don't put a black trash bag beneath a blue one, and I'm sure there will be some getting used to that. I will be referring this to ordinance tonight, or I'll be asking to refer it to ordinance, but I'd hope that we can work on this, and I've already spoken to the chairman of ordinance, and he said he would be able to take it up soon, so I do appreciate that. On that, I just move to refer this to ordinance.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Camille.
Yeah, I want to thank the councilor for bringing this out. I think the spirit of this is something I think we all want to address. I think common sense, for a lot of people who are common sense, I already do this. I mean, I already put it in a barrel because, of course, you don't want an animal ripping through, and you know, if you're going to put it out at night. I do have a few concerns, and I know it was good that you talked with the controller about the costs. I do want us to try to consider, you know, this seems to be, it's putting the onus on our residents to go do this, which may be the answer in the end. I was just kind of looking quickly here. Are there any, lack of a better word, teeth to this? I mean, are there penalties or fines that are outlined anywhere if this isn't followed through? Is that the method of, or I should say, is that was that your intent to enforce it that way?
Through the chair, there are no new specific fines or violations for this, but there is under existing ordinance fines associated with the violation of a city ordinance. So there's already a fine structure for a violation of a city ordinance.
All right, so it's okay.
So it would just be a general ordinance, and if someone is repeatedly violating that, we already have the stickers that we put on it saying, this is not allowed, we put it back on the property, things like that.
Right, so my concern is somebody they're unaware of it, we put a sticker on the bag.
I don't know if that's how it's going to actually run out.
Okay.
I don't know if that is.
I want to talk about that, is my point.
Exactly, the enforcement is important.
Yep. All right, thanks.
On Councilor Spatafora's motion to refer the matter to Rules and Ordinance. All those in favor? All those opposed? The matter is referred. Next order of business.
I have a communication from the Malden Housing Authority. They submitted their annual report for 2019.
Motion to refer it to, I just want to be clear, I made the motion to refer to ordinance. I know you think it's trivial, but I do think it's important that we get that accurate. I made the motion to refer to ordinance.
Okay, you made the motion. Go ahead.
I just have that communication from the Malden Housing Authority that they submitted their annual 2019 report. Okay.
On Councilor Murphy's motion to place this communication on file, all those in favor? All those opposed? The communication is placed on file. Next order of business.
This is a communication from the Planning Board. It's paper 50918. Be it hereby ordained that Chapter 12 of the revised ordinance of 1991, as amended, be further amended, relative to allowing multifamily dwellings only up to 7 stories. That's, do you want me to do the?
Yeah, do it all.
Okay. Be it hereby ordained that Section 300.1.1, Chapter 12 of the Revised Ordinance of 1991 be amended to read, except for residential use, dwelling multifamily more than 6 stories but not to exceed 7 stories, where special permit shall be required by the City Council in accordance with Section 300.10, all structures more than 6 stories. For all uses where a special permit is required, as indicated by letters SP, may be allowed by special permit granted by the Planning Board in conformance with the following controls. Be it hereby ordained that Section 300.3.2.7 of Chapter 12 of the Revised Ordinance of 1991 be amended by striking dwelling multifamilies more than 6 stories but not exceeding 12 stories, and inserting dwellings multifamily more than 6 stories but not exceeding 7 stories. Be it ordained that Section 300.3.2.88 of Chapter 12 of the Revised Ordinance of 1991 be amended by eliminating in the entirety the use category dwellings multifamily more than 12 stories. Be it hereby ordained that Section 400.1.2.7 of Chapter 12 of the Revised Ordinance of 1991 be amended by striking dwelling multifamilies more than 6 stories but not more than 12 stories, and inserting dwellings multifamily more than 6 stories but not more than 7 stories.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, here we are once again. Basically, this paper, as you heard, went before the Planning Board last month. It was approved by them to come back to the City Council. What it does is it puts back in the table and back in discussion what our residents want, okay? Supported by, first of all, the master plan in 2010, which basically said 9 years ago that we should be reducing the height of our buildings in Central Business District, to the most recent moratorium study and the Malden land use study. The moratorium study, when we went out, which was one of the biggest surveys we've ever taken in the city, with over 2,000 respondents, 75.96% of the respondents said they did not want to see a building over 6 stories in central business. Now, keep in mind, we're not talking about office buildings. We are just talking about residential buildings, which are condos and apartments. So basically what this paper does in layman's terms is it does some housekeeping where there was a use category for over 12 stories, but it had a no on it. Okay, it wasn't by special permit, it wasn't, anything, it was just a no. So it's cleaning that up and taking it off of the zoning ordinances so that no one can come back and say, well, it was there. And then the other thing that it's doing is it's keeping the existing process in place where the planning board would issue special permits for a request for an apartment or a condo complex in central business that was 3 to 6 stories. So we're not going to take that away from the planning board. They still will be the special permit authority. It's taking the next category, 6 to 12, and it's making it 6 to 7. Okay, and that would be by special. Currently, 6 to 12 is special permit by the city council. This would make the city council hold a special permit granting authority for anything 6 to 7. What it does is it takes into consideration part of central business, which is on Exchange Street, which, when you look at the grade, could go to 7 stories. So basically, it cleans up a pre-existing paper, and I believe makes it more palatable to everyone concerned on this DS. And I hope that you'd all look favorably upon it tonight. It's been a long road in getting here. I do believe it truly is what our residents want to see, and I would hope that you would pass the paper. And I'm open for any questions anyone has.
Thank you.
And also, Ms. Romero from the Planning Board is here to answer any specific questions that you might have of her.
Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the effort that Councilor Murphy and Councilor O'Malley put into makes these changes to the paper. I think it is better than the one that did not go through before. I mean, personally, I do believe that six-story buildings are very sufficient for a community. There's even like in urban planning, the theory that people who live in six-story buildings interact more than bigger buildings. So I basically believe that. I still do also believe, based on my campaigning, that we do have some very great affordable housing, our senior buildings that are taller than 6 stories. So I personally, you know, am open to that in the future, but I think I'm planning to vote in favor of this paper because I think it makes sense for downtown. And but if there are other opportunities that the community would support for senior affordable housing that's a little above 7, I have an open mind, but let's get this tidied up and done. I think it does reflect the overall sense of the community about, you know, market rate multifamily housing, and this is how we want to shape the community, and this is what people want Malden to look like. So I support that. Thank you. Great.
Thank you. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, to echo Councilor Murphy's statements, I think this has been a great compromise paper. The main concern I had when we voted against the 6-story height limit in the past was the fact that we had a number of buildings that were currently being constructed, including our own, City Hall, that were attached to and are 7-story buildings. It would have made a number of buildings pre-existing non-conforming. That creates a ton of additional legwork in the future if they go for a special permit or really anything. So by adding and allowing there to be a 7-story height limit, it really helps with the grade change from Pleasant Street to Exchange Street, because a 6-story building on Pleasant Street is a 7-story building on Exchange Street. So again, I'm very happy to be co-sponsoring this with Councilor Murphy, Matheson, Spatafora, and I look forward to passing this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kamel.
Yeah, I'm going to vote in favor of this tonight. I just wanted to talk about it. It's a long road for the legislation, a long road for me as well. I've wrestled sort of back and forth with arguments on both sides. There are good arguments that sound in terms of favoring dense development near transit, but I think as you take a step back and you really look at it, there are a lot of costs that come with that, and so I think this is a reasonable thing. Again, it is what I heard from residents all across campaigning. It was the one thing that I heard more than anything else, which really kind of put a bright light on it for me to consider that. So I'm going to vote in favor of this tonight, and it's been a long process to consider, and I want to tip my hat to the folks who really kind of pushed this through with all the work that they did, and our planning board and our city planner, she's still here, she's not here, for all the work in assisting us in getting this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Di Maria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too will be supporting this. My first thank you is to the sponsors of this paper and the planning board. The retooling of this makes it so much more realistic. This is, just to confirm, this is in our central business only, is that correct? Because I'm looking to see, I didn't see that in the language, but it is for that. I also spoke with the building commissioner several times on this. He is in full support of this. So I am very thankful for the retooling of this, and I look forward to carrying on the wishes of our community, and I will be voting this supportively. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Matheson.
Thank you, Madam President, and I would like to thank the sponsor, Councilor Murphy, for her stick-to-itiveness. She did not give up. She is a tireless advocate for the residents, and I say that because I just heard her mention that 79.6% of people had said that they support this, limiting the height to 6 stories. 6 stories was not passed the first time. I did support it. I would have supported it again. We've added a 7th story, and it looks like you're gaining unanimous support among the councilors now. But the most important thing we can do is fight for our residents and the type of community that they want to live in, because that's our job, is to represent them. So thank you, Councilor Murphy, for coming back and not giving up on this paper. I'm voting for it.
Thank you. Councilor Condon.
Thank you, Madam President. I supported this paper with Council Murphy last year, and I'm still supporting it. I think it's the right thing to do for the downtown, so I will be voting in favor of it.
Thank you. Councilor Crowe.
Thank you, Madam President. And actually, this was taken up last week in the Ordinance Committee, so it actually is a committee report from the Ordinance Committee. I just wanted to make sure that I think Councilor Spatafora might make an amendment to this, because when the communication came back from the planning board, it also did have, with the recommendation of adoption of the amendments as proposed, with the following additional language, that 400.1.2.7, excuse me, maximum height, delete 120 feet and insert 75 feet. And last week in committee, that was actually, we adopted, well, we approved unanimously with that amendment. So we amended, and then we referred that out unanimously with that amendment. So I want to make sure that that is reflected in these, in the papers. So I guess it's Council Spatafora to do the.
Councilor Spatafora.
For the committee report, or you just gonna want me to speak?
No, committee report.
Thank you, Council Camel. Do you want me to do the committee report so you can vote on it?
Well, you got to receive it first.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
I thought you wanted to speak on it, I'm sorry.
I can speak on it, but I can do it, whatever way you want to go. We have to
Yep.
receive the committee report, correct, which he read.
Yep.
The clerk already read.
So really fast.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, first I want to recognize that the city planner, Michelle Romero, is here. She did remind me, I was looking at my notes because there was a lengthy discussion on the 6 and 7 stories based on, Council O'Malley said the grade. And we had the city building commissioner, who was actually texting me. I told him he needs to has a life. He was watching the planning board meeting where he lives, and was telling me to make sure you put the heights in there, because we want to make sure that's how he determines it. And the planning board recommendation did include that, and that was discussed last week, and that is what everybody's voting on. So that was my only comment, to make sure that was included.
Perfect. On behalf of the chair, I too fully supported this paper when it came to us the first time, and I will be in support of this paper this evening. This is definitely something that the residents speak loudly about. They want no more apartment buildings, and I think we need to respect their wishes. So with that, on Councilor Spatafora's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Committee report is received. Councilor Spatafora for the committee.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. The committee did meet last week. To be repetitive, it was voted unanimously. We did go to the planning board. Everybody knows this was a second attempt, and I think everybody spoke eloquently on the rationale and the reason why. So I would ask on behalf of the ordinance committee for the council's full support. Thank you, Madam President. With the amendment to reflect the amendment, which was part of the recommendation. It just wasn't in the committee report. So that recommendation again was on 400.1.2.7 that the maximum height delete from 120 and insert 75 feet, just to make sure that's in there. And I'll make sure I leave a copy with the clerk to make sure it's reflected in the minutes and the ordinance. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay. On Councilor Spatafora's motion to amend as recommended, all those in favor? All those opposed? The order is amended. On Councilor Spatafora's motion to enroll as amended, clerk will call the roll.
Councilor Anderson? Yes. Councilor Kamel? Yes. Councilor Condon? Yes. Councilor Crowe? Yes. Councilor DeMaria? Yes. Councilor Matheson? Yes. Councilor Murphy? Yes. Councilor O'Malley? Yes. Councilor Spatafora? Yes. Councilor Winslow? Yes. Council President Sika?
Yes. The order is enrolled. Next order of business.
Committee report, communications from the planning board, paper 521 of 18. Be it hereby ordained that section 700.1.3.1 of chapter 12, revised ordinance in 1991 as amended, be further amended to add the following language: 700.1.3.1, except in the case of conversions or changes of use of an existing building containing more than 3 stories, no residential conversion to a multifamily dwelling greater than 3 stories is allowed. There shall be no variance of this provision. Receive. Yeah, he got to receive.
Okay.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. This paper is basically cleaning up some, little bit of something we didn't address a couple of years ago when we actually put the 3-story maximum for residential buildings outside of central business. So if you all remember that we did pass an ordinance that said this, you know, you can't build anything more than 3 stories in anything outside of central business. However, there are existing buildings, some of which are located in all our wards, that are more than 3 stories. Then they're basically, you know, they might be a manufacturing, an industrial use, they're a commercial building, et cetera. So what this paper does is it does 2 things. It allows those buildings, if they are 3 stories, to be converted into residence, okay? If they're 4 stories, it grandfathers them in to be converted to residence, okay? Or if they're 5 stories, it grandfathers the height of that building in so they can be converted. However, if it's a industrial location, however, if that building is torn down and it's 4 stories, or 4 stories or more, and it's torn down, okay, and then rebuilt from the ground up, the grandfather clause does not apply. So it has to be a rehab for the grandfather clause to not apply. And Ms. Romero's here, so she can, if I don't hit every point, I'm sure she'll come up and give us a little bit more information. Anything that is 1 or 2 stories, okay, could go up to 3 stories. So we're not limiting, you know, an industrial or a commercial building that's 2 stories to just be rehabbed to 2 stories. It could be torn down and rebuilt as 3 stories. It could have a 3rd floor put on it if it obviously, from a construction point, was, you know, deemed viable, and it could go up to 3 stories. So basically, that's what it is. It's taking these little commercial buildings that exist in all our wards and putting a limitation on them so that they can't exceed that 3-story limit that we passed a couple of years ago for residential buildings outside of central business, but does grandfather them in if it's a rehab for anything over, any stories over the 3 stories that exist. Ms. Romero, did I get that right? You usually have something to add.
Thank you. I would just add, thank you, Michelle Romero, City Planner.
And 35 feet, right?
Thank you. I would just add that any of these, as you call them, rehabs or redevelopment of pre-existing non-conforming properties still requires a special permit.
Okay.
So we're not changing any of the special permit use regs in the sense of the requirement for special permit, but what you described was correct. It's in all the other, it's in every residential zoning district these properties exist. There's probably a few years back when we did a survey for one of the papers that came forward for this paper that expired in committee. I believe there were about 120, 125 properties, so throughout the city that this could potentially apply to. So it's a finite number of properties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I won't.
Councilor Matheson.
Oh, thank you, Council President. I'm a little more confused than I think I should be, and that's probably my fault. Ms. Romero, you're so knowledgeable in this area. If I could just ask you a couple questions about this. So if someone has an existing building that's not residential now, and they want to convert it to a residential use, let's say apartment use, because that seems to be what everyone's doing these days. They can do that if it's 3 stories. They would still need, I would imagine, some dispensation, some
Any
special permit?
conversion still, any petition, they'll still require a petition for special permit.
Still have to petition
That's
for it.
correct. And the findings need to be made. It's not a guarantee. There's nothing by.
Right, you hear from the
Right.
community, you see if it's more detrimental to the
That's
community.
correct.
Okay, now, let's say that same structure is now 4 or 5 stories. I heard Councilor Murphy say they're grandfathered in, but still require a special permit?
Right.
Can we hear that again?
Under the zoning ordinance today, so we're not changing anything, and it would still exist, that particular property can still petition to convert to residential use if it's in a residential district.
Okay.
So it still can petition for multifamily.
And that goes before the planning board?
That's correct.
Okay. What if it's 6 stories?
If it's 6 stories and it's a pre-existing non-conforming 6-story, say, for example, factory in Residence A, that will still come in under the same zoning ordinance, section 700.1.3.1, and require a special permit by the planning board.
Okay, so up to 3, you petition. Above 3, still requires a special permit. Until what level? Is there any limit?
There is
no limit of existing buildings.
Well, there's no limit to existing buildings. However, you could only petition for a residential use that is technically in our zoning ordinance. So that was one of the other reasons that last paper you just passed was important, because you've eliminated the over 12-story use category.
Okay.
So
I understand a little bit better, and Councilor DiMaria and I both had some questions. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague here. Thank you.
Councilor Spatafora.
Is this for the committee report or just a comment?
A comment.
Thank you.
I have others if you.
No,
Okay.
no, that's fine. I just want to echo, what Council Murphy said, and the planner and the other councils who spoke in favor of it. It's just another stopgap, some loopholes inside the ordinances that allow some things that we don't want to happen. Certainly, we encourage development, but this eliminates one use, but also gives us keeps the special permit. And what we were starting to see, I think, from a council perspective, and I know the ward councils as Malden is obviously a desirable city, close to Boston. More of these developments are now leaving the central business districts in the squares and going closer and closer to the neighborhoods. And pre-existing is something you can accept to a special permit, but I think coming in and adding 2 or 3 floors to make it more of a viable project for developer is something we wanted to eliminate right off the bat. And I think this is another message that the council's been listening to what the residents want in protecting neighborhoods and creating that hopefully natural barrier between downtown and our neighborhood. So just want to recognize everybody who voted in favor of it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafora. Councilor DiMaria.
Thank you, Madam President. Michelle, just a quick question, and I don't even know if it applies, but I know recently the Board of Appeals voted not in favor of the American Legion because of several issues. Is this going to affect that particular building?
that particular building, they actually, and I don't want to say too much because I believe there may be some litigation ongoing, but that particular property had filed under had filed two different petitions. The first one was looking to allow a use at the property that wasn't allowed. So it was greater than 3 stories. It was multifamily dwelling 3 to 6, which wasn't allowed in that district. And that was, the building inspector made that determination, and that was upheld by the Board of Appeal, that determination. The second petition was under the current zoning, so it was multifamily up to 3 stories. So they wanted to redevelop the property using that use category, but they didn't meet all the requirements. That's my understanding. So they went for variances of the requirements they didn't meet. So they sought variances at the Board of Appeal. They filed petitions. Those were the petitions that were denied by the Board of Appeal. So the petitions, that particular petition, which is, would still be able to be filed. I don't know if that's your question.
Yeah.
That particular, again, presuming someone comes back with the same proposal, they could still propose to build up to 3 stories. That property, though, and I should take a step back, those petitions were filed under use regulations under 300. So those uses are allowed by special permit. This is specific to pre-existing non-conforming.
Okay.
That building was not pre-existing non-conforming.
Okay.
So this wouldn't affect them.
Great.
For a couple different reasons. One, because I don't believe they were filing under this, but even if they were subject to this, this wouldn't affect the proposal as I understood they had proposed it, which was only up to 3 stories.
Okay, that's great.
But I do want to note, if I could, thank you. The planning board recommended a different language for this paper, and I did work on this language with the building commissioner, Nelson Miller. And so you should have a copy of the recommendation that was filed with the city clerk. It's not listed on your docket, but it was, and maybe that you're going to take that in as the committee report. Right, so you should definitely make sure if you're moving forward with this, that you're looking at the correct language. It fine-tuned that language, as Councilor Murphy said. This paper, we heard a couple of years ago in a certain format, and it was basically refiled in the same format. But since then, we've been able to fine-tune and improve the language of the paper to make sure it is going to do what we want it to do. The building commissioner, again, and I worked on this language, he's confident that this will accomplish the goals. He will be the one that's interpreting this and enforcing it, so it's obviously important for him to know what you mean, what we mean, and what it says. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President, and I appreciate you pointing out the fact that what is here on our docket tonight is not what we're actually voting on. I know, could you give us a little bit more of an in-depth understanding of how Section 300, which is our normal zoning, and Section 700 differ? Because that's something that I think once I understood, it's kind of eye-opening. So could you just kind of give us a really layman's understanding of the difference between the 300 section and the 700 section?
Okay, yes, and I do want to note, thank you for mentioning that. I think I misspoke. When I said that it wasn't on your docket, the committee report is on the docket, the number, but the text that was under it, I would say, wasn't complete. So that's what I meant. This language wasn't, I'm not saying it had to be, I'm just noting that. But 300, so special permit, Section 300 is the table of use regulations. So that tells you what you can do for particular properties, how property can be used depending on the zoning district it's located. So that's the chart in the zoning ordinance that says, yes, it's allowed by right, no, it's prohibited, or SP, it requires a special permit. So when you look, for example, in the column A, that's residence A, and you see all the different uses, and it says either no, yes, or SP. So if a project comes in and files under Section 300, they can only file if it says yes or SP. And if they don't meet the dimension, if they don't meet dimensional controls or parking, they will also need variances. So they would need the use regulations, the use permit, either it needs to be allowed by right or a special permit, and then they would need to comply with all dimensional and parking. The project that we were just talking about, that was filed under Section 300. When you looked in the column residential office, it said SP up to 3 stories. So they were going to file for the special permit, but they didn't meet dimensional and parking, so they also needed to file for the variances. Because when you look at the use regulations under special permit, it says must comply with all dimensional and parking for new construction. Section 700 addresses what's called non-conforming property in the city. So if there's a property in a certain district that doesn't meet those use regulations, it's a pre-existing non-conforming factory or a gas station in Residence A. So if you look at that 300 table, it says no, factories not allowed, no industrial uses are allowed, no business uses are allowed, multifamily is not allowed. But if that property has been legally used for that use prior to the adoption of the zoning or an amendment of the zoning, it's considered grandfathered in. It's pre-existing non-conforming. So it has to have been legally used. There was an occupancy permit legalizing that use. So it predates the zoning. We usually say 1977. So that's the first mark that we look at, 77. But there are things that become pre-existing non-conforming, as recent as this past year. Depends when you change the zoning. So anything in that Section 700, there's a separate set of special permit regs. And this is similar, much of our ordinance mirrors state law in this effect. in this respect, Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, so this is, a lot of cities and towns have the same provisions. Ours are a little bit more fine-tuned, because we fine-tuned them over the years, at least in the past 20 years since I've been here. So a property in one of these districts that has a pre-existing non-conforming use also has certain rights, certain grandfather protections, exemptions. They can continue as is legally. So that gas station can stay a gas station as long as it stays a gas station. If they ever want to expand or extend, same use, they need a special permit. If they want to change the use, they also need a special permit. The way our Section 700's written for the residential districts is any of those properties can petition to change to a residential use. You can also petition to change to general offices or retail services. So there's a couple other exceptions we've carved out. Years ago, it was open-ended. Any property could petition to become anything. So a residential property could petition to become an industrial property. So the gas station could say, I want to become a manufacturing plant. And there was an option under the laws for them to at least file that petition. I'm not saying it would have been successful, but there were options. So,
What were the two other? You said residential use, and what were the other
I'm
two?
sorry?
You said residential use, what were the other two? You said in Residence A,
in residence A, B, and C, any residential use, retail services, and offices, general offices. No, that's currently. So it was very broad years ago. We fine-tuned it. At one point, it read only, it can only change to residential use. Then we started to expand it back a little. But we did it very restrictively. So it's only retail service. You can't petition to become a restaurant. You can't petition to become any industrial use. And now this particular proposal will add a phrase to where it says you can petition for residential use to put in this 3-story height limit, the multifamily up to 3 stories. So it's going to fine-tune that provision. So you couldn't petition to be at, if you're a 2-story factory, you can't petition to go up four additional stories.
Right.
If you're an existing 4-story factory, you are still grandfathered in, at least the building's grandfathered in, you could still petition for residential use, a residential conversion, but not to increase the height, and, it still needs a special permit. So I don't know if that was too complicated.
No,
but
that
there's
was-
two sets of laws, essentially.
I think
going
that
on
was
here.
perfect. I mean, I think hopefully it helped us all understand how those sections are different. It was very clear to me, so thank you again, Michelle.
All right, and the other thing I'll just quickly add, since I mentioned, if you come in under the 700 section, and a lot of you have heard this at the planning board meetings, the planning board, under the laws, can legalize nonconformity. So those petitions don't have to go for variances and special permits. The planning board looks at all the nonconformities, parking and dimensional, and can issue a special permit that covers everything. As opposed to the other ones, the section 300 permits need special permits and variances if they don't comply.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
On Councilor Spatafora's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Committee report is received. Councilor Spatafora for the committee.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, going a little bit in reverse, but we've heard the reason and rationale and the support. It was voted out of the ordinance committee yesterday after meeting with last week. My cold's killing me. It was voted out unanimously. Excuse me. The language that was not included was similar to the first one, was just the details, and that is, I'll provide this to the clerk, but I'll make sure I read it. It's just a little bit more granular, and it adds the height restriction again at 35 feet. So it says, provided that in the case of an existing building or structure containing more than 3 stories and/or having a height of 35 feet or more, where the change of use is a multifamily dwelling, so we just added the word multifamily in there. No increase in height shall be allowed, and in the case of reconstruction or new construction, the only multifamily dwelling use of property that shall be allowed is quote-unquote dwelling, multifamily, and up to 3 stories inclusive. Yep. Somebody say something? I'm sorry. These provisions are use regulations and shall be no variance for these provisions. So just some more details in that. That's what we're voting on. I want to make sure it's in the record. I'll give this to the clerk as well. But like I asked earlier, request support for this paper from the full council.
On Councilor Spatafora's
Was it amended?
motion to amend,
Yes.
as recommended, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Thank you.
Order is amended. On Councilor Spatafora's motion to enroll as amended, clerk will call the roll.
Thank you. Anderson, Councilor Anderson, Councilor Kamel? Yes. Councilor Condon? Yes. Councilor Crowe?
Yes.
Councilor DeMaria? Councilor Matheson? Yes. Councilor Murphy? Yes. Councilor O'Malley? Yes. Councilor Spatafora?
Yes.
Councilor Winslow? Yes. Council President Seeker?
Yes. The order is enrolled. Next order of business.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay. This committee report, License Class 2, Champions Motors USA, 251 Broadway, Malden, 15 cars.
Motion to receive the committee report?
On Councilor Murphy's motion to receive the committee report, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Councilor Murphy for the committee.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This actually is a Class 2 license. The Champion Motors USA has moved from the location 251 Broadway. It is currently occupied by another entity. They did apply for a license. We did ask them to come in last week. They did not show up. Having confirmed that they no longer reside in Malden, the committee unanimously declined the license, and we would ask that this committee also deny the petition.
On Councilor Murphy's motion to deny this petition, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The petition is denied. Next order of business.
That's all I have, except for those 2 tables.
Oh, yes. Councilor Kamel.
Thank you. So I want to make a motion to take a paper off the table. It is 50718. It's at the end of everybody's table paper. This pertains to veterans abatements and increasing them. There are provisions in Massachusetts state law that we can just sort of adopt. This had already been to the Finance Committee. We discussed it in the spirit of it. It came out, committee report recommended favorably. However, sort of near the end of that process, it was discovered that there were some problems with the language, just the fine print of the language. We now have what I believe we have an agreement between members of our staff that were looking at the details on that. What I want to do, what I want to ask is that we refer this back to committee. It was discussed that maybe we do it on the floor tonight with the amended language that was emailed to me. But unfortunately, the staff members aren't here. I want to be able to triple check this, make sure it's done correctly. It's already kind of went back and forth, so I want to make sure, take time, do it correctly, do it in committee, ask all the questions we need to ask. So that's my motion. Please send this back. Sorry, motion to.
We have to take it off the table first.
Thank you. Motion to suspend rules for the purpose of taking.
No, just remove from the table. On Councilor Kamel's motion to remove from the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The paper is removed from the table.
Please refer to what I just said.
On Councilor Kamel's motion to refer to finance, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, I make a motion to take paper 2719 off the table. This relates to the schedule for the elections. We tabled this 2 weeks ago to look at some of the deadlines. So I make that motion to take that paper off the table. 2718 is still on the last page, second to last page there, so. Oh, sorry, 2719, I'm sorry, yeah.
On Councilor Winslow's motion to remove from the table, all those in favor? All those opposed? The paper is removed from the table. Councilor Winslow for the paper.
I know one reason I asked that we put this on the table was to look at some of the schedules from other communities. And in your packets, in your folders, I put in some information that you can look at. Already some other cities have scheduled when their nomination papers. I talked to Carol Ann in the election office as well as Tom, city clerk. My understanding is the only deadline in this schedule that we have discretion over is when nomination papers would become available. So all the other deadlines, I mean, once you set the final election, that sets the preliminary election, and then the dates to get the nomination paper certified, all that's set by state law. The only date we have as discretion as a council is when nomination papers are available. And just a note, for instance, my note was that this schedule we received 2 weeks ago was for June 18th to receive nomination papers. Just wanted to make a note that Everett, for 2019, their papers are available May 1st. Revere, for 2019, they're available May 6th. Woburn in 2017, May 1st. So, you know, I think there are other communities near us that are making the papers available sooner. I think it's for several things. I think it's good to consider, and I would make a motion that we move our date up to May 14th. I think, you know, we have had at times elections, especially for school committee, where there's nobody will take the nomination papers out, and so I think it gives more time for people to realize that no one has taken nomination papers, and so that we do have people take off in that time frame. And also, as a councilor at large, I think we do have to gather more signatures, so it gives us more time. And I think, like I say, just in the spirit of making it a little bit easier for people who are considering to run, to go out and gather the papers. I know as a ward councilor, 50 signatures is not that big of a burden, but for other people, 200 is easier. So I just think it's in the spirit of making it a little easier. Seeing that other communities are doing it, I think it's good. So that would be my suggestion, to amend the orders to move up the first date to, it moves it up 5 weeks from June 18th to Tuesday, May 14th. So that would be my amendment. Thank you.
Second.
Councilor DeMaria, did you?
Thank you, I do. And thank you to the sponsor for doing the homework, comparing it to other neighboring communities. I think that we should do everything we can to encourage our residents to get involved, our people to get involved with the work of our city council. I think that if it's not a burden to the Board of Registrars, it's not a financial burden, I see absolutely no reason to not move forward with an earlier date. So I will be supporting this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. And through the Chair, I know the sponsor referenced Revere, how they had an earlier nomination paper availability of May 6th. They also require only 50 signatures for Councilor at large. Are you asking to change the number of signatures that are required for your race, Councilor Winslow?
No, I'm just the date of changing the suggested date from June 18th to May 14th.
All right. And I do appreciate that you provided Medford. That's our most similar community, and they have what looks like a very similar date, June 13th. You know, it's no skin off my nose or skin off my back, however the expression goes, but I've never heard anyone raise any questions about this before or any complaints about it, and my default position is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But that being said, I also don't see the harm in moving it. So, again, I mean, I think our dates work. Medford works for Medford too, but again, I don't have any strong objections or feelings one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kamel.
Yeah, I believe Councilor Winslow answered this question, but forgive me just to make sure. All of the other dates stay the same, so you can get it May 14th, but then you still have until July 30th to submit it.
Yes.
Okay. Just confirmation.
Yeah,
Yep,
yes,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Counselor Spatafora.
The only thing I would ask is, have we asked the registrar if this is a problem going out earlier?
I spoke to Carol Ann, and she said that it was fine.
Yeah, and the other point I would make, Everett and Medford, while similar, they're also all at large. There are no ward-based elections in those two communities. So that's why I think they definitely give them more time because of its entire city. No, I'm saying, but they're all at large too. It's not limited to a ward base, so it's a little bit different. I mean, I agree with, Councilman Mathis, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. But the same token is, I mean, if you want to extend it, you can extend it. But if you can't get your signatures in a certain amount of time, giving you 30 more days, I don't think really helps you, to be quite honest with you. So, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Counselor O'Malley. You're fine. Counselor Di Maria.
Thank you for the second time. I also just wanted to add that in the community of Melrose, if you're already an elected official, you don't even need nomination signatures. So, just going to throw that out there, so. Thank you.
Thank you. So, on Counselor Winslow's motion to amend, all those in favor? Roll call, please. Roll call, sure.
And
Sure.
set the date to May 14th, I think.
Of May 14th. All those in favor? Roll call, sorry. Roll call.
Counselor Anderson? No. Counselor Kamel?
Yes.
Counselor Condon? No. Counselor Crowe?
Yes.
Counselor Di Maria?
Yes.
Counselor Matheson?
No.
Counselor Murphy?
So I'm gonna hum the Jeopardy song?
Counselor O'Malley? Yes. Counselor Spatafora?
No.
Counselor Winslow?
Yes.
Counselor Seeker?
Yes.
5, 6, 7, yes, have it. 7, good. Just gave everybody else more time to run against you. Okay.
The motion to amend, the order is amended, excuse me. On Counselor Winslow's motion to adopt as amended, the clerk will call the roll.
Counselor Anderson? Counselor Kamel?
Yes.
Counselor Condon? No. Counselor Crowe?
Yes.
Counselor Di Maria?
Yes.
Counselor Masterson?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor O'Malley? Counselor Spatafora? Counselor Winslow? Yes. Counselor Seeker?
Yes.
That's it then.
Order was adopted as amended. Next order of business, personal privilege.
Personal privilege.
Personal privilege. Counselor Kamel.
Thank you. Fair warning, I'm going to be repeating this just to make sure it's out there. I want to thank Councilor Murphy for letting me sneak over the ward border. On March 6th at 6:30 p.m., I'm going to be holding a Ward 6 community meeting at Salem Wood School. Not in the ward, but right over the line. I'll be hosting the ward meeting to take any and all questions and feedback. We're going to have a few city staff join me. They've committed to join me, including yet again Ron Hogan and Bob Knox and Yem Lip will be joining to answer questions about specific topics, including parking, streets, and anything else that the community wants to bring up. So we'll have a little bit of a presentation and then take questions and answers from the community. And again, that's March 6th at 6:30 p.m. at the Salem Wood School. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Murphy.
Yes, once again, I would just like, on behalf of the Junior Aid Association of Malden, which is an organization that supports women's and children's health issues in Malden and the surrounding communities, we are having a Valentine Derby this coming Sunday at Anthony's of Malden. It's simulcasted horse racing. It's a great day of fun, just a lot of activity going on. It starts at noon, runs till 3. There's a great luncheon buffet. Tickets are $40. You can email myself or Peg Crow or Debbie DeMaria. We're all members. I would love to see you, there, and just come out and enjoy a fun day for a very, very good cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, one of the key issues I've been focusing on is transportation, and I just wanted to make a note for fellow councilors and the citizens. The MBTA is proposing some important changes to local bus service, and so through the Better Bus Project, citizens can comment on those changes. And just to point out what's specifically suggested for routes in Malden, for the 106 bus, they're looking at providing more frequent service on Salem and Main Street, but simplifying the route, which could eliminate direct service to Melrose on that route. And then for the 131, 136, and 137 buses, there would be changes and consideration of actually having those routes terminate at Oak Grove rather than at Malden Center. So there's some good things and some different things on that. The 411 and 430 buses, there's some simplification of those routes as well and some changes. So I'd encourage people who are regular bus riders to make and review those things at the mbta.com under the Better Bus Project. And also on March 4th at the Malden Station, there will also, the MBTA will be there gathering and surveying our customers and residents about service. So this is all type of things that we as a city need to work on and be prepared to address. So I will, if other councilors are interested, I'll keep people up to date on what's happening. But these are important impacts on our residents. So it's something that we as a city should be attuned to and aware of. Thank you. Great.
Thank you. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. To piggyback off of Councilor Winslow's statement about buses, and I want to recognize the councilor for his long track record in advocating for pedestrians and automobile safety throughout the city. I think that an event that happened last week that many of you may have heard about, a MBTA bus hit a pedestrian crossing Center Street. And Center Street and Commercial is very busy with people coming off the Orange Line and going to various businesses downtown as well as their homes. I am working on some type of resolution that I'd like to bring to the council, urging the MBTA to not study anymore, but to actually take action in this area. I think it is unsafe. Trying to cross Route 60 is a nightmare. In my opinion, Route 60 goes from a single lane in each direction in the east. It balloons to 4 lanes, and then it goes right back down to 2 lanes just after you pass the fire station in Ward 3. This particular intersection impacts 3 different wards, Ward 4, Ward 2, and Ward 1. And I do believe that action needs to be taken sooner rather than later. So I'll be coming forward with that in the near future, but something to think about, pedestrian safety in our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and happy Valentine's Day.
Councilor DeMaria.
That's a good one. I didn't even think of that one. Thank you, Madam President. And also, happy Lunar New Year. I believe that's today. It's to our Chinese friends and neighbors. This is a big holiday, and it's the year of the pig. So I'm going to say that. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. And I do want to give a shout out to my counselor on the left, who is going to be celebrating his big 40 birthday within a couple of days. So I know you don't want to sing happy birthday, but can we give him a good round of applause? Happy birthday, counselor.
Happy birthday.
We can sing. You want to sing? Let's sing. Counselor Condon wants
You really
to
do?
sing. Let's sing.
No singing.
Thank you.
Are you good?
Happy birthday.
Oh, God, we really are singing?
to you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, dear
Dear
counselor.
Happy birthday.
Good one.
I guess.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, so seeing no other lights, on behalf of the chair, I would like to give a shout out to one of our Malden High students, Angela, to Jada Solis. She was nominated by Congresswoman Catherine Clark to West Point.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
she, not only did Congresswoman Clark nominate her to West Point, but she invited her with her this evening to Washington DC to the State of the Union address.
Isn't that
So
great?
it's going on right now. She's there. So big shout out to Angie, huge accomplishment. What a great experience for her.
Awesome.
And I wish her well. And nobody mentioned the New England Patriots.
I know. It's for you. Oh,
It
we
never
should've
gets
all
old.
worn
It never,
shirts.
ever gets old. Our fellow counselors appreciate it, but my kids know nothing other than winning.
Winning.
It's like a second nature to them, so huge accomplishment. They don't even realize the history that they're experiencing because it's just been second nature to them. I remember growing up and watching everybody else's teams in the World Series and the Super Bowls, so it's a huge accomplishment for the New England Patriots, and Bob Kraft is just amazing. Tom Brady, the way that they speak about one another, it really goes to show you how people should treat one another with love and respect. Tom uses the word love so freely. It really, truly is amazing. So on that note, good night, everyone.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.